Salam Media. And of course, your host, my name is Lukman Skink. And we talking about probably the biggest story of the week. And that is finally President Cyril Ramaphosa has made up his mind and has chosen acting Chief Justice. Well, now he is elevating Raymond Zondo to the position of Chief Justice of South Africa. He succeeds the uh, Justice Mogoeng, who retired in October. So unprecedented method of trying to get the successor, and finally the decision has been made. Is this a good political move? And how does one look at this, particularly from politics and of course also the judiciary? Professor Barry Hanyane joins us live, and he's our guest at the stage. Prof, good morning to you and hi.
Good morning, sir. Good morning to your listenership and viewership.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Prof. Were you surprised that? Let's start with the choice of Justice Zondo. Were you surprised? I mean, the JSC did say that Mandisa Maya was the recommendation, but then the president, which he was able to do his own prerogative, decided to go as on. Are you surprised?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, you have a foot soldier in now Chief Justice Zondo, who takes over the reins from Mogoeng. So,
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of continuity, for the sake of stability, for the sake of consistency, this choice makes sense in all accounts to say, look, as a state, we were once under the siege of state capture. And here is my trusted, loyal foot soldier who has carried us through the investigative, probing kind of phase of this all important issue, which threatened governance overall in the country. And somehow indications are that he has managed to deliver and withstood a barrage of criticism and all manner of attacks from different quarters of our society. But more so, he's been in the forefront of the bench, sharing that space with Mogoeng and other critical yet capable lawmen in the Constitutional Court. So why not preserve that aspect well, but of course forfeit the history-making appointment of Madam Maya, who would have been the first woman as Chief Justice. But then if you bring her, not necessarily be back door, but front door, as the deputy, that in itself is a milestone in the struggle for women's emancipation.
Mm-hmm.
Although she would downplay that herself, I think she remains an ambassador in advancing those rights, as she sort of like argued during the interviews.
Mm. And speaking about those interviews, Prof, many people have criticized those interviews, saying that they were very, like the commissioners asked questions that were not, that were quite unfair. In fact, they said that based on the interviews alone, Justice Zondo was not supposed to even make it to be, the Chief Justice. He had the most difficult interviews. Were you happy with how the interviews were conducted?
Well, let me share the sentiment generally, not necessarily, but at the same time, you've got to understand the character and caliber of your commissioners. The
Mm,
minute you open it up to politicians, expect fireworks.
right.
Perhaps to a certain degree, expect some inconsistencies from a legal point of view, that
Mm,
some perspectives, some questions may not necessarily add value into the legal, influence and fraternity, as it were. But
mm,
then that's understandable. And already there is an outcry to say, why not remove politicians from this process and leave it purely as a state slash administrative exercise? But then we
mm.
now understand the oversight of politicians from a parliamentary point of view will always remain sacrosanct in one form or the other.
Absolutely, and they are duly appointed, and the whole process. It actually speaking about the process, Prof. For the first time, President Ramaphosa decided to make this a public process. People had to
Mm,
nominate their justices, and then we went through all of that, the
mm.
panel, and then, do you think this was? Do you think it was a good method of getting to the final choice?
I
The
think it
public
was fair.
participation? Yes.
Yeah, I think it was fair. Judging by the
Mm,
overall reaction,
mm,
what a sigh of relief this morning as I listened to various media stations reflecting on, your general reactions from various quarters, be it civil society, be it opposition parties in parliament,
mm.
ordinary folks. There is this emerging consensus that for once we can all sing from the national hymn book, if there is one, that says, "Look, finally, the president got it right." And what a
Mm.
strange public sentiment! It doesn't feel right, but it's good, you know.
Finally, you got it right. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, people were wondering when will the decision be made. In fact, a few days ago, people were saying, "Okay, Mr. President, you've had enough time. Give us a
Yeah,
decision." All right, now going forward, Justice Zondo has only got 2 years left of his term, right, in the
yeah,
Constitutional Court.
yeah.
So, what is this? What will this mean for his term?
Well, simply put, it could mean that Maya takes over. He leaves the bench.
Okay.
It's not necessarily an administrative decision to make, but also has legal implications. And one would then have to read into the terms of conditions of that work,
Mhm.
the ethics book in relation to his appointment and position as well. I think 2 years it's good enough time to pass the
Mm.
baton to Maya, and
Okay.
maybe the overall decision did consider this reality and say, look, it's temporary overall,
Hmm.
but be that as it may, for the sake of parity, for the sake of stability, let's take this route and see what's going to happen in
In
two
the future,
years, three
yeah.
years from now.
Hmm.
After all, we're still waiting whether the president will serve his second term. That also has implications far and wide in terms of saying his administration is intact, his administration is a machine that will be able to deliver on promises made rather than lead us to the precipice.
Whew. And on that note, Prof, the political note, the fact that we have elections in 2024, the fact that we are in a conference year for the African National Congress, the fact that the president will probably want to run again, so much in
Mhm.
the air. But at least when it comes to our judiciary, we know that we are in good hands
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Justice Zondo. And do you think that the work that he did with the State Capture Commission is something that has endeared him to South Africans?
Yeah,
Because
it's
at the end of the day, we did choose him, or at
yeah.
least took part.
Mm. No, no. From my side, at least, um, he has influenced me to want to be a scholar in that space. Right.
Mm,
I've begun collecting books written by your informants, the likes of Maseko and others,
mm,
and read those anecdotal accounts. It's scary, but at the same time, it says to us, if as a young democracy we don't wake up and protect what we have, our children and grandchildren will have nothing
mm,
to be proud of. And here's one person who withstood criticism. You can take it back to the behavior by the former president, who, in my view, played victimization quite well and it didn't end up well, because for the first time in history, you have an ex-president who would then be sent to jail.
mm.
Whatever the outcome it is, it's something for another debate. Then, of course, you had an attack directly from politicians. In this case, Madame Sisulu, and
Right.
and through consultation with other colleagues, he saw it fit to respond. Although it was criticized, I feel it was an honorable gesture. He
Hmm.
doesn't have to find himself in that political space, but we now understand politics influence life generally.
Yes.
And by the way, he will have to be in a position to respond and fall back. He doesn't have to occupy that space. So he's done that very well. And then we can talk about all other important issues, his traits, his demeanor, his way of handling things, his professionalism, and any other virtue that goes with that. I think he stood a good chance. Second would have been Judge Mlambo on my book. But hey, we had overall four big names, and I think the president must have had a couple of cups of tea, far fetched from the popular tea coming from Kandla in making his
Mm.
decision.
Professor Barry Hanyane, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to speak to you, and thank you so much for breaking it down for us so that our viewers can actually make sense of what's happening politically and also on the judicial front as well.
Much appreciated, and
You're welcome.
best wishes to you and
Professor
your
Barry Hanyane talking to us there about the new Chief Justice. South Africa finally has a Chief Justice, and that is Justice Raymond Zondo. We know him from the State Capture Inquiry. He basically is the only sitting judge in this country that sent a former president to prison. He has been praised by the opposition, at least the Democratic Alliance, as safe hands for the judiciary. South Africa being a democratic, country with a constitutional democracy, very important that the democracy and the judiciary are in safe hands, at least going forward. So, Professor Barry Hanyane, they're saying to us that for the sake of consistency, continuation, and safe hands, very good choice that the president has made. Do you think the president has made a good choice? If you want to weigh in on this, you can by dropping us your comment on our WhatsApp line 061 766 0355. That's 061 766 0355.